With a new movie around the corner, the release of Star Wars Jedi, Fallen Order, and all the upcoming shows for Disney's new streaming service, it might make sense for you to have Star Wars on the mind. If you're particularly hardcore, you have probably had Star Wars on your mind for decades. Copious content used to be fairly common, believe it or not, this is nothing new. But, back in the day, that content took the form of games and books. Here are some examples of excellent Star Wars games that deserve a remake. Starting with Star Wars Episode I, Racer, which was available in arcades, on the Nintendo 64, and on PCs, was one of the first games to give me a real sense of speed. Beyond that, there was a full world to explore that was full of canonical Star Wars characters who had only been seen briefly in The Phantom Menace. The vehicles could take damage, explode, and each felt different from one another. Beyond that, it would be a treat to go back to a game with unlockable levels and vehicles. Nowadays, everything is locked behind microtransactions. Number 2, Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire, for the Nintendo 64, is an excellent game filled with different types of gameplay. The first level, which sees players piloting a snow speeder in the Battle of Hoth, is particularly memorable to me. The speeder chase is up there, as well. The on-foot missions are pretty challenging, and I struggled with them as a kid. That said, Dash, the roguish protagonist, was a cool addition to the Star Wars universe at the time, and it's tragic that he's been wiped from the canon. Also, the game had some seriously badass cheat codes. Number 3, BioWare's Star Wars: The Old Republic was an RPG that leaned heavily on the role-playing elements. Players could craft their character in a myriad of ways, ultimately choosing a path between Jedi and Sith. Dialogue choices are, as you'd expect from BioWare, well written. The story stands out, due to it having one of the most memorable twists in gaming. The game also spawned a sequel and led to the MMORPG, Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, which leaned heavily on the style of the original game. Number 4, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed is another game where it's a shame that the story is no longer canon, because it added some of the best bits of lore I've come across to the Star Wars universe. The game itself is an action game where you play the secret apprentice to Darth Vader, Starkiller. The game has satisfying action and top-notch set pieces, and its place between Revenge of the Sith and New Hope leads to an incredible realization. What is it? You'll have to play the game to find out. Number 5, Star Wars: Rogue Squadron was one of my favorite games as a kid and remains one of my favorite games today. I guess I'm just a sucker for the vehicles in Star Wars, and modern games that feature them basically don't exist. The game has a collection of missions that puts players into the cockpits of various vehicles, including a flying car if you input a cheat code. The game handles remarkably well and I'd recommend it to anybody who can get their hands on it, which is why it needs a remake.